Good morning, Econ students. Time for some feedback on Review FRQ number 1. As promised, we'll do this the morning after we do each FRQ. Try to make sure we're all on the same page. I like this one because it included some of the new stuff, comparative advantage, stuff we went over really just a few weeks ago, and the old stuff, the unemployment rate and production possibilities curve. So we'll start. I'm not a big fan of the way the question's phrased, and even less fan of the numbers. I probably should have changed them. Said again, got these from an old AP exam, but let's look at it anyway. So FRQ number 1. Countries face trade-offs between producing consumer goods and capital goods. Part A, country X takes 1 hour to produce a unit of consumer goods and 2 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. So right away, with this problem, we're talking about how many hours it takes to make something. That makes it an input problem. So this is an input problem. And we'll talk more about what that means in a second. We're talking about how long or how many resources it takes to make a product. Output would be product per hour, like how many goods per hour. Okay, country Y. So country X, we'll set it up this way. We'll have, it doesn't give you a table, so you kind of got to set up your own. You've got X and Y. We'll say hours per consumer good and hours per capital good. Right up there. Okay, so setting this up. A country X takes 1 hour to produce consumer goods and 2 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. Like so. Country Y takes 2 hours to produce consumer goods and 4 hours to produce capital goods. Like so. And then the question is, which country has a comparative advantage in the production of consumer goods? Right away, or with input problems, you're looking for absolute advantage. You're looking for the smaller number. So X is better at both. X has what we call, remember, an absolute advantage because it only takes them 1 hour to produce a consumer good and 2 hours to produce a capital good. They are more efficient. Okay, lower, they do a better job. So they have an absolute advantage. Comparative advantage occurs when we do the fun things with fractions. Who has the lower opportunity cost? And this is something that was emphasized if you watched the review video yesterday that the College Board put up. Input problems go under. So output goes over, input goes under, and that's how we determine comparative advantage. So we put the numbers under 1 over 2. 2 under 1 and 4 under 2, and then 2 over 1, 2, so we end up with F reduce. And so that represents opportunity cost. Now, one thing that makes this, I probably should have changed the numbers a little bit to make it less confusing. Notice that both X and Y have the same opportunity cost when it comes to hours per consumer good, and the same opportunity cost when it comes to hours per capital good, which means neither of them have a comparative advantage. I'm sure they can figure it out in terms of trade, but because the answer is because the opportunity cost is the exact same, neither country has a comparative advantage. Okay, so that's what Part A was all about. Part B, I'm not gonna recreate the table here. You have it hopefully in front of you, but this was one I was happy about because almost everybody who turned it in got this one right. Got both parts right. So let's review the formulas. Because you get a bunch of stats listed here. Calculate the unemployment rate. Remember, unemployment rate is number of people unemployed divided by the labor force times 100%. Now remember the labor force, and these are the formulas, remember, that you should be writing down on a note card or a piece of paper. They will come in handy in a month with the AP, or 3 weeks of the AP test. So labor force is all the unemployed people plus the employed people. So it says right away, number of employed people is 180,000. So let's make that our denominator, 180,000. But remember, we count all the unemployed people as well. And they have 3 categories of unemployed people, but they're all unemployed. They all count as unemployed. 10,000 frictionally unemployed, 5,000 structurally unemployed, and 5,000 cyclically unemployed. You add those up and you get 20,000. So 20,000 unemployed plus 180,000 employed. Number of people unemployed, so it's 20,000 times 100%. It's 20K. 20,000 plus 180,000 is 200,000 times 100%. And your answer is 10%. So the unemployment rate for this country, this is country X, unemployment rate is 10%. Now, we didn't do as much with the labor force participation rate. Let's do that formula here. Labor force participation rate is your labor force, so total number of people in the labor force, divided by the total population. So all the employed and unemployed people, divided by the total population. Okay, so this would include all the population includes all the people not in the labor force. And we multiply that by 100%. So we already established from the previous part that 200,000 was your labor force. Okay, all the people who are employed and all the people who are unemployed. The population, well, to figure that out, you include all the not labor force people. And as you see in the table, not in the labor force includes 100,000 people. So you get the total the labor force, 200,000, plus the people not in the labor force, 100,000. So it ends up looking something like that. So you get 200,000 divided by 300,000 times 100%. And our labor force participation rate, basically 2/3 of the population. Kind of, it's not too different from our current labor force participation rate, or at least before the current pandemic problem started. Okay, so that is labor force participation rate. Total labor force, including all the employed and unemployed people, divided by the total population. The population is going to include all the people in the labor force and all the people out of the labor force. And the last question on there was a production possibilities question. So it says, draw a production possibilities curve for country X, consumer goods on the horizontal axis, and capital goods on the vertical axis. So looks something like that. Based on the current level of unemployment, plot a point indicating the current state of country X's economy. Now we could just draw a generic production possibilities curve, or production possibilities curves. When it looks like that, show increasing opportunity costs, meaning the more and more consumer goods you make, the fewer and fewer capital goods you make, simply because goods are not interchangeable usually. If it was a straight line, then the goods would be interchangeable. Like the difference between making, I don't know, Nutter Butter cookies and peanut butter cups, because they have the same ingredients. So, it doesn't say anything about that. So basically you can just draw a generic production possibilities curve like that. Now the question is, based on the current level of unemployment, plot a point indicating the current state of the country X's economy. Now, this is a tricky question. Remember, if we're on the PPC, that's full employment. Okay. There is always going to be some unemployment in the economy. There's always going to be frictional, and there's always going to be structural. There's always going to be frictional unemployment, people moving between jobs, and structural unemployment where new technologies create new jobs while destroying others. Okay, or companies moving from country to country. Some jobs moving in, some jobs moving out. So there's always, when we have full employment, doesn't mean 0%. It means there's always going to be a small number of frictional and structural. What we don't have when we're on this curve is cyclical. Now going back to part B, notice it says there are 5,000 people who are cyclically unemployed. Cyclical unemployment means that it's caused by a recession or a business downturn or a business slump. So for that reason, our point would be inside the curve, because there is some cyclical unemployment. If there was zero cyclical, we'd be on the curve. Because like I said, there's always some frictional and there's always some structural. But as long as there's structural, as long as there is some cyclical, we are not at full employment, so we would be inside the curve. Remember, inside the curve means we're not using all our resources efficiently. Outside the curve, it's unattainable unless we have economic growth, which I'm sure will come up on future FRQ questions. Okay, so that's what the last part looks like. So you have another one today, dealing, I think the one today, well, I'll post it in a little bit and we'll talk about it tomorrow. So have a good day. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.